Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all there in front of your screens, and I hope you look forward to, let's say, a rather unconventional talk, so to say. So let's just jump into it. And of course, we all like this certain framework that we have out there, right? Vue.js, of course, no doubts. Is it perfect? For sure not. No, but it's amazing to use out of all the choices out there. But maybe there are some features that some of you out there are missing. Maybe some of you even wrote an issue or created a PR, who knows? Or maybe just talked with your coworkers like, you know what? There is this one thing that's always annoying. And well, I thought, why not listing a few things that at least I would like to see in Vue.js, in the framework, in the core itself. So welcome to my talk. View it yourself. Got you there. Features that are missing in our favorite framework. Right. I already had a very nice intro, so I keep that short. I'm Alex. I'm a web engineering consultant, also speaker, as you can see here, giving some workshops, and I also host a podcast. Well, if you're staying tuned, we have a little AI panel from Deja Vu podcast later on, or if you're watching the VOD, then definitely check that out. It's probably linked somewhere. So yeah, that will be super exciting. Looking forward to that. But first of all, let's talk about the features. Of course, as mentioned, I was and I still am on the Nuxt.js team for like more than 7 years now. Well, 6.5, something like that. I'm not part of the Vue team. It's also a big disclaimer. I also didn't like talk to people in the Vue team saying, "Hey, how you like that idea?" It's more of like my thoughts out there. So big disclaimer. Nothing I will show here is like guaranteed to come whatsoever. Just ideas. Of course, I'm also on social media, mainly Blue Sky nowadays, doing YouTube videos once a week besides the podcast episode. It also comes weekly and yeah, open source, some live streams. You know the drill. I also have a website that I, should update at some point. So I always say that I feel like, but it's like that. So yeah, and you might think, missing features? For real? I mean, like, for real? Missing features out there? Anyone? Really curious, like right in the chat, I have that right there. And also thank you so much for love and chat already. I'm curious what you think might be the missing features on your list. I would say, well, there are the easy ones, but well, of course we have to talk about them. Vapor mode. Resumo already gave an amazing talk right before me. Also really worth watching the VOD if you watch later on. So definitely check that out. It was amazing. We're not here to talk about vapor mode. Like Evan did it briefly before. Resumo's talk, as we mentioned. Multiple components in one file. A lot of people, especially coming from React and other JSX-based frameworks, say that. And we also had a very good talk from Shenkin-chan about Vue Vine, and I also made a little video about that. So also not here about that. And of course, Vue native. Everybody out there is like, yeah, we need the React native out there for Vue. It's unfortunately won't happen anytime soon unless you out there wanna start it, of course. Evan said multiple times, sadly, there's no capacity from the core team. So that's actually a fact that was stated also in the Deja Vu podcast. So unlikely to come from the core team. So we're not here because of these features, right? This would be too easy. Then I would say like, okay, you know what? Talk's done. No. We go for some other things. And some takes might be spicy, as I mentioned. Some ideas are like very opinionated. So let's start with some things that are maybe not that much. Native scoped CSS. And you might wonder like, wait, is this sounds more like a browser suggestion, right? And well, actually, if you see this code here, right? Like, okay, scope, article body to figure, image, border 5 pixels, solid black, background color, goldenrod. So anywhere between these CSS selectors, you can actually, wait, scope CSS? Is that possible? Yeah, it is real. This exists right now. This is a thing in CSS. And eventually it also can be used to power scoped CSS in Vue in the future. Because, well, unfortunately, it has no baseline compatibility yet. What does it mean? Well, I have this wonderful image here. Let me quickly move me away here. There we go. Maybe up here. And we see, okay, Chrome, check. Edge, check. I mean, they're all Chromium based. WebKit, Safari also done. Firefox still not implemented, but on the radar for 2025. So we might see it this year that native scope CSS has baseline support and then also can be implemented in Vue, in a minor version, I would suppose. So definitely worth to keep it on the list. This will eventually happen when all of that lands at some point. I'm quite certain about that. Okay, but also this one. Yeah, it's an easy one. browser feature, incorporate that. It will be way easy to generate native like scope CSS from Vue, so all good. Not much to debate here, I guess. How about the rest? How about vModel? But we have vModel for, well, not for everything apparently, for dialog and details. And now I might think, wait. Come on, if you have a very simple code example here with like a dialog and smash some vModel on here and say, okay, it's open, some content, a button that toggles that, right? And of course, the script part goes on top, but for demonstration purposes, we keep that here. You tell me that doesn't work? Well, or I tell you, yeah, it's true. Let's take a look at the Vue playground here. And I actually just opened that. Of course, the links are also in the slides for the playgrounds. And we see an error message here. vModel can only be used on input, text area, and select element. So yeah, it's not supported yet. Also, here's an import missing. Well, auto imports, but still it's not the problem. So that's unfortunate. And ideally, we want to have that, because what else is perfect for like dialogues, like toggling, or details for like that accordion style, just like unfolding magically? I think that would be a pretty good addition. And luckily, I'm very happy about it. I'm not the only one who thinks that. So actually, there is a PR by the one and only Anthony Fu, shout out, PR 8048. It's there, it exists, and it's also tagged as ready to merge. So we probably will see that feature in the future. So I really think that we will see this probably rather soon, though it's also open for a little bit, but definitely an easy addition. Also, let's say kind of a no-brainer, right? Another feature that I don't have in the list here, someone is suggesting native handling of HTTP requests instead of adding Axios would be nice. A lot of opinions there. I personally am happy that Vue doesn't ship like an HTTP client like Angular, and we have the flexibility of using Fetch API, OFetch, what we use in Nuxt, Axios, whatsoever. So I think that's a rather good decision. Nevertheless, let's go back to the slides, of course, because we have one more thing here, and this is also something I was looking for a while. And I had a very interesting research going on there, conditional props. So let's just say you have a component, and that component has a prop called prop1, and you have to provide that. That's great. Okay, fine. And it also has a prop2, and you can provide that. All good. But what you don't want in this case is that you provide both of them. So you say either or, like a really XOR, right? A mutually exclusive OR. And well, you can try doing that. Of course, if you use TypeScript, you have to type it somehow, and it's not that straightforward. But this is only one of the cases of conditional props. There's also another case, actually. So if you take, let's say, a nested version of that. So let's say only a certain combination, not like one or another, but a certain value combination of props should be okay to render or forbidden. Let's say we have an app button, and the button has lots of variants and lots of colors. So instead of saying, okay, you can mix and match them, we say, variant primary, color blue, all good. And for the variant ghost, we only want to allow the color white for some reason. But nothing else. Like, we are not allowed to put in any other color there, or maybe just, omit it fully, or select only 2 colors whatsoever, right? So a restriction. Also, this is a version of conditional props, but just more nested. And yeah, this is all a thing. It's tricky, let's say. So let's go back to that example here. If we would have that, then we would basically have one more step to like full type safety of Vue templates, right? Which is, to be fair, one of the benefits of JSX out there. So it would be good to have that. There's also an issue about that. And actually, I tinkered around like with that in the last days, and there is actually a way, and I will show you that in a second, that you can do that with TypeScript juggling and generic components. So let me quickly jump there. Here we go. Maybe make it a little bit smaller. That's fine. So we have one nested conditional and one top level conditional like component. And we have these examples here with like good. So the nested ones, basically the button example. And actually we can get rid of this here. That's fine. But here we see, okay, the nested conditional fails down there if white and text are there, but only white and outline should be there. Same idea, different code. Top level, to say one or another, but not both, also works somehow. We see though different error messages and so on. And believe me, it is, well, it is a little bit of juggling with TypeScript. And I think a more ergonomic way would be great, because mainly people who are really good in TypeScript, they might be able to do that. Yeah. For example, the link that Alex just shared in chat, it is possible somehow. And I also will release a video tomorrow showing that in depth and what the workarounds are. But ideally, we have an easy way that everybody understands without like super deep TypeScript knowledge and figuring out generic components and so on and so on. So that would be great. I think an easier and a more intuitive way would be pretty amazing. There's also a GitHub issue to track that. Also links for that all in the slides, and happy to post them in the chat afterwards. So we have that kind of, but yeah, there's a workaround, let's say. Also, it would be great to have that without TypeScript. So think about that like top level, either one or another. We can't really have that right now in Vue with just plain JavaScript. So yeah, I think that would be a fair addition as well. Okay, great. Now DOM event type helpers. And once again, you might think like, okay, wait, what's related to that? If you don't use TypeScript, this is irrelevant for you. So let's say we have an input here, okay? And once again, the template tag is first. Yeah, usually we don't anymore. I mean, some of you might. We talked about it a lot already in the past. Let's say we have this function here. On input, passing an event, and we have event.target the value, we log that. If you be more precise here, let's say it's an input event. And if you take a look at the function now, maybe some of you who work with TypeScript and events regularly, they will see already, there is something odd here. I'll give you a little bit of time to think what it might be. Write it in the chat if you want to, and I'm happy to show you in the playground in a second after you've thought a bit about it. What could be, let's say, wrong here, maybe what the TypeScript compiler could complain about. And let's open this real quick. Also, the playground, cycling through real quick here. There we go. Ta-da! Dot value, complaint. Property dot value does not exist on type event target, which is fully correct because event target, as we see here, is just an event target. That could be any kind of node. Well, how do we fix this? Probably people using TypeScript, they know, okay, we can wrap some parents around here and have to cast this, for example, as HTML input element to say, okay, this really has a value because it has that input element as the target. And either you do that, save that as an actual like variable and then refer to it and so on and so on. But you might forget about it. You might wonder, especially if you're a beginner with TypeScript, like, what's going on here? So it's not very ergonomic. And well, we could change that also here. So yeah, let's just face it, not the most elegant solution. But what if we just say, okay, we don't have to cast that, and it's not really type safety as we have to cast that. Why don't we do something like this? So going back one more step here from this to this. So we move the type up as generic of the HTML, of the input event. Yeah, of course, this doesn't work like that right now, but it could be in the future. If you might wonder, wait, this reminds me of something. Let's take a look once again. This here, input event, HTML input element. This syntax reminds you, maybe someone who's working with a lot of frameworks. Yep, correct. You see what I see. React is doing that. And it's one of the things that React does pretty well, I would say. It's a nice developer experience. But I think in the Vue ecosystem, we can even go beyond that. So let's check how. Well, the main point is that we could say, okay, we don't need any casting. Great, we provide that. Lovely. The default, like standard input event can't take that, right? It's not defined like that. We keep the type safety. Well, now we say, well, you put the generic in there, so it's not really type safe. Yes, but Vue.js could just type check the thing that we provide based on where we use it on input. So it says, okay, we used it on input, on an actual input element. It can check it and say, hey, is it really an input event with the HTML input element there or not? So there is a lot of options for tooling that definitely could be used. So surprise, there is another PR by Carlos, PKX, PR 3370, also for a while out there. introducing exactly these changes. So also someone out there thought, hey, there is a better way to do that. It's similar to React, but we could even go one step further. So also the Vue.js integration is not there yet. First things first, right? That would be great. So why not? I think that would save a lot of headache, especially for people who are not used to like TypeScript casting. And we could actually have more type safety once again. I mean, that's great. Another thing out there that we could consider in terms of type safety is strictly typed slot props. While we can already type not only strictly typed slot props, we can do this. Wait. We do strictly typed slot children, because obviously we can type the props. That's awesome. But what's with this here, this any? That's a bit meh, because what we actually want is to also say, hey, what can that slot possibly return? So now you might wonder, okay, how does it work? How can I actually define that? Because of course we can say, fine, I don't return any there, but what else? Well, there's another proposition for that. And the idea would be to say, great, we have a change here and say, we define different slots as well, not only the default slot here, just the return type and say a V node, so like any kind of node is fine, or an input element, HTML input element, or maybe a slot component with a common prop. So that means it's not a specific component instance, but saying it's a component that actually requires a certain prop or a certain prop combination. Sounds neat, especially once again, that would help a lot with tooling and type safety. Here we go again. Vue.js, the Vue extension could check that. So great. Lovely. Why not? And also it's fully optional. If you put in any, it's fine. Otherwise, well, all good. So definitely worth checking that out. There's once again the idea and the RFC for that also by PKX, by Carlos. It's open there. Feel free to share your thoughts on that, because I think it's a pretty great change. If you also think so, definitely leave your comment there, linking that in the chat after the presentation together with the slides. And then, well, Suspense. Suspense is amazing. We already know. Great. Evan talked about that in his talk. 3.6 will have stable suspense. Finally, yeah, I know we waited a lot for that. We all don't want to see that warning anymore. Very aware of that. So that's great. But here are a few things that might be great to have or to include. Something like multi-root support, because right now Suspense can only wrap things in a single root. I might say, usually not a problem, just wrap something around, but it depends how many components you render. Sometimes these DOM nodes can make a difference if you don't need them while rendering them. It also can mess up with styling and so on, so on. So it would be great to have that. Also, improved error handling in the Suspense component, right? Of course, we have like a fallback slot. And for async components, we can define an on error. But maybe in the Suspense component themselves, we don't have to rely on the error of the component. There could be also something done. Just an idea. And well, coming from the Nuxt side of things, working SSR teleports with Suspense is a long-standing issue. It would be amazing if that, would work out with 3.6 and stable Suspense. That would unblock a lot of magic in the future, or just say amazing features. Okay, and here comes a more spicy take. Yeah, you already saw it. I know. Everybody is like, oh, I don't use TypeScript, please. No. Don't worry. I mean it like you've seen it, but it's not that bad. Just think about it for a second, and we'll go through it together. I show it again. It's all good. TypeScript by default. Yes, I said it. I'm very much aware. It is a spicy take. I know. And there are also a lot of people in the ecosystem who are not really a fan of that. But I would say, okay, why not enabling TypeScript by default? Actually, I'm also not the first one proposing that. Evan also suggested that when we talked with him August last year, something like that, or in the summer somewhere, as a possible option for a future Vue version. Because we all like people betting on TypeScript, sure. There is also an open issue that says, hey, can we have some kind of flag so we don't have to write the TS everywhere? There are also people, for example, Johnson, author of AN Signals, Volar, and so on, who said, it's not that good of an idea because tooling has to support this kind of flag then, and so on. A lot of, difficulties there. And I also want to fully leave that up to the people. But I think TypeScript as a default, especially that you're not really forced to say, okay, I have to write TypeScript, I have to annotate everything, but just say, okay, by default, I have a rather lenient TypeScript config, TS config, and you can just write JavaScript. But if you want to opt into that, it's not a problem. You just make it stricter or just use TypeScript. It seems like a very progressive approach. So yeah. Also, people in the chat, TS by default, but maybe script setup by default, so we don't have to add setup every time. I think that's also a pretty interesting one. Definitely, if they're not there, raise an issue. Maybe for a future, let's say, major version that could be considered. So yeah, definitely leave an issue for that. I would probably vote it up. Okay, back to the browser with my face down there. So yeah, there are some things, and the best part, actually, surprised, it's already possible thanks to Vue macros by amazing contributors and Kevin Deng, who is the lead maintainer of that library. So there is an option that can basically, let's just quickly check it. It says script lang. Of course, it's experimental, very important. Yeah, it is experimental. There we go. And you can just say, okay, script setup will be converted to script setup lang TS. In terms of removing script setup, maybe that's also something that Vue macros could test out and support if it's not already there. So definitely check that first. In general, Vue macros are really, really amazing library, thanks to all the contributors out there. Great. And also home of the reactivity transform, if people remember. So yeah, awesome. We have a lot of things there, actually. We have a lot of cool features, but that's kind of a list. Though I have to say, before we get to learning, this was mainly focused on the core. We didn't talk about the router. We didn't talk about Pina. We didn't talk about things like DevTools or Vite itself or Nuxt, for example. So all these things, of course, can also get a lot of improvements. And maybe I may talk about the features that I would love to see Nuxt. Might also be a bit spicy. Let's see. But back to what did we actually learn based on this list here, or at least what I got out of that. Besides, there are some cool improvements coming. Mainly, it's about DX, right? DX and tooling improvements. The native scope CSS is a bit, out of the rule there, a little exception. But I think that's also because it's a browser feature. I could also say, hey, support native signals when they're out. Boring, right? We all know that might happen when the TC39 will move them into the standard at some point. It will also bring more type safety. So of course, DX tooling, more type safety, which is a lot of people, and once again, people that are used to very strict and full type safety features, that could also help saying, okay, look, hey, you can do all the things you could do before without using JSX in Vue SFCs. So it's definitely a plus for all of us. We all hate runtime errors, so honestly. And most features, if we go through them, once again, they're either plan changes, yeah, like Suspense, of course, some ideas, but it will be stabilized, right? Or there's lots of PRs, right? Or there are existing workarounds. For example, as we've seen before, conditional props, right? So all in all, that's, I would say, pretty decent results, because that kind of means that also Vue already is pretty amazing. We have nothing like, oh my God, how could we ever miss that? Probably because the Vue core team would have thought about it years ago and already implemented it, or at least tried it. But also, I mean, you knew that before, right? That Vue is amazing. I don't have to tell you much here. So if you're ready for more content, please follow along. I have a YouTube channel, as I mentioned earlier, where I release once a week about Vue Nuxt, new hotness, what's going on there. Tomorrow is head conditional props, and of course, also co-host of a lovely podcast called Deja Vue, where we have an AI panel later on about AI and Vue.js. All the links also in the chat in a little bit after the presentation. So thank you so much for your attention. Really appreciated all the comments, the questions, and I hope you have a lovely day too of Vue.js Nation. See all the other amazing talks, and see you later at the panel. Thanks, everybody. And I guess we're up to the questions.
Yes, to the questions. Yay.
Nice.
All right. So we do have a few questions. First one, what patterns do you use to fill polyfill missing functionality?
Well, I mean, ideally, I try to use baseline compatibility. So ideally, there is no like old browser support. But if I really have to, well, there are some like Vite plugins for like Vue Legacy and so on. I probably would go that direction if I know exactly that I have to target a browser where I see, I don't know, intersection observer is missing or whatnot, then I would try to polyfill it directly. But yeah, ideally, if you have the chance to do so, don't support all browsers. It's easy to say if you don't have to, I know.
Okay. And next question of there was a bracket, I just want to say, between the maybe first script setup. There were the brackets, but we can't paste those here. So TypeScript by default, yeah, but maybe script setup by default would, so we don't have to add setup every time. Wow, I'm
Yeah.
having problems reading today.
No worries. Yeah, I answered already that like impromptu in the talk. I think it's a good idea. Maybe that's a great case to open an issue in Vue macros straight away, and then just say, hey, this would be a nice macro to implement, and people can use it, try it out, see if it makes sense, and maybe in Vue 4 it might be a thing.
All right. And up next, what criteria do you use to evaluate if a feature belongs in core Vue?
Well, I mean, I don't evaluate any of these. Luckily, in a way, luckily, but where my thoughts came from, it's more like, okay, can I do this with anything else, like kind of a plugin module? Is it more like fitting to, I don't know, the Vue router because it's only a router feature? In the core, it's really more like things that you can't enable anything else. For example, I know server components is something that Nuxt has and that Vue will not support. Also, according to Evan, that could also fit in the core if the idea is, okay, let's move like in React, the core of Vue to be also server, not only client. But as that won't happen, there are other ways to try it out, like in the Meta framework that does SSR. And same with other things. If you can write a plugin for it, it's not belong in the core. And with my experience in Nuxt, it's also a similar idea. If you can do it already, then probably it's a good idea to put in a module and add that to your application. That's great. Also for testing, so people can try it out. A bit like with the Vue macro suggestion from the question before, just having a way for people giving it a try without straight away saying, okay, it has to be an experimental flag or whatsoever. Yeah, and then at some point, of course, if there is an RFC and so on, then it might be good if people are happy with that and tried it out and give their feedback to add it to core if everything fits.
Thank you. All right. How do you handle feature gaps in production applications?
Well, I think the key part here is I mean I've seen a lot of applications in Vue and Nuxt, and I've never really seen an application where people are like, okay, I want to do a certain thing with Vue, but I really can't, except they're using a fully wrong tool for the job. So usually, like you can build so many amazing things with Vue.js, and of course there are improvements in terms of okay performance for data visualization with vapor mode and so on, so on. So there might be some, let's say, shortcomings that will be addressed, or some cases where other tools might perform better up until the current time of record, of course. So it's also more like fitting the right tool in. But usually it's more like, okay, business logic or how people deal with Vue's composables or like misuse them. So it's a bit of education as well, not the shortcomings of the framework itself.
Perfect. That's all the questions we have time for today.
Great.
Thank you for joining us, and see you in a bit for the panel.
Exactly. Thank you, Jen.